You could just do the circuit in Toronto for the next, few hours talking about bringing a team back to life 3-0. Not many, only 1 of 4. Can I ask you in terms of, first of all, to just kind of compare it to what the Leafs are going through right now? When we talk about, your Flyers up against Boston going down 3-0, as a coach, what did you identify the most that was wrong that you needed to change or change the energy? What went wrong if you kind of compare it to maybe what the Leafs might be going through?
I thought back then, I thought that we had played, some games you don't play well at all, and you probably deserve to lose. I thought that we had played pretty well in the first 3 losses. And so I don't think that there was any lack of confidence, or I don't think that, our guys were in the room trying to figure out how we're going to do this. And, obviously we talked about the moment and not thinking about the 3 games in the past and not thinking about, the possible game that might come after that. And we just talked about staying in the day and staying in the moment. And I do think that, part of it, I think, was being able to handle the pressure of a situation like that. We had some pretty cool cats in the room at the time. Pronger was in there, and Hartnell was in there, and Timonen was in there, and we had Richards and Carter, and they were really good young players at the time, and Simon Gagne. So we had some guys. But more than that, I think at Christmas by Christmas or by the first of the year, we were last place in the league. And so that whole second half of the year was a lot of pressure and a lot of, I had to do the right things and play the right way. And there were setbacks along the way too. Like, if you remember, we made it in on the last day of the year. That's the year that we won. It was either the Rangers were either going to go to the playoffs or we were going to go to the playoffs on game number 82. And so inside of that, there was pressure again, and like dealing with that and how to play with that. And when it ends up going to a shootout, and I remember once we won that game, it's like we took the biggest piano and just threw it off our back, and we placed New Jersey in the first round, and we went right through them. And we ended up coming out, and I thought we were playing okay. And so it wasn't talking about major changes that had to be made. It was about staying confident and staying positive in the things that we were doing on the ice. And we found ourselves, in that situation down 3-0. I think the guys just stayed in the moment, and they played hard for one game, and we found ourselves a win. I think that first one might have been in overtime. I think game 4 might have been in overtime. And so that pushed us on from there, and we ended up making it to game 7.
We're talking to Peter Laviolette, and the discussion is 2010 Philadelphia Flyers coming back from a 3-0 deficit to beat the Boston Bruins. JB?
Yeah, Levy, was there a moment there in that series where you felt the tide turn, where you went, okay, it's only game 5, but I feel like our guys believe this is possible now? Or, does it come when you make the goaltender switch? Where do you start to feel the vibe that it's possible to scale the mountain?
Well, the goaltending switches were out of necessity. They weren't based on a call. We literally moved between Boucher and Leighton based on injury. And so one carried us. Leighton carried us. He came on late in the season, and he's really the guy who backstopped us and got us in the playoffs. Boucher played great when he was called on, and then Leighton got hurt, and Boucher came in, and he delivered. And right at the time when the coaching, we made a switch, it was because of an injury. And then, Leighton was back in net and Boucher was injured. I think Boucher, if I remember correctly, somebody went into him and he had a double groin pull. He went into a wicked V split. And, he went into a wicked V split and pulled both groins. And so he was out, and so Leighton came back in. But, again, I think that you have to win one game. Like, you have to win that one, and then that confidence that you can grab from the one game is incredible. And like I said, it's not like we felt like we were badly outplayed. I'm not saying that Boston played bad or that we deserved to win. We just weren't outplayed. They were good games. They were close games, and we lost all 3. And so to play in game 4 and to get that win, it was a lot of confidence, especially for a team who had dealt with a lot of pressure and a lot of circumstance through the course of the year, to fight back. It was a situation that we were familiar with. So, from there we won the next game, and I think one of the games was a pretty good shutout. I think maybe there was by quite a bit, and it ended up pushing to a Game 7 back in Boston, and then that became even more dramatic because, I mean, the fans in Boston blew the roof off the place in the first 10 minutes because they went up 3-0. And so not only were we down 3-0 in the series, we're now back to it again, down 3-0 in a game. And the guys never lost their composure. They never lost their cool. And, we got a goal going into that second period. And we said, listen, forget about the first and forget about the third. Let's win the second period. Just stay in this moment right here. Let's win the second period. And we ended up winning it by 2 goals. We won it 2-0. And so it's now 3-3 going into the third period.
Lavi, much like Sheldon Keefe, a goaltending change out of necessity. Where were you with Leighton in terms of where he was in his career, his development, his mindset to go into it? Much different, I think, with Joseph Wall, who's never started a game in his life in the NHL playoffs. Was there thoughts that Leighton can come in and do the unthinkable?
Well, he had done it to that point, Kev. Like he had come in, and we had a lot of goaltending injury that year. I mean, it was a ton. I mean, at one point, I think we took Carter Hutton out of college to back him up for a game. And there was a lot of things that went on. Ray Emery was part of it there, and he had that major hip surgery replacement, and we were behind the 8 ball with injuries with regard to the goaltending. And so Michael Leighton, for the most part, played most of his career in the minor leagues, and his stats in the minor leagues are unbelievable. Like, I think he holds records in there for shutouts, and just a terrific goaltender in the American Hockey League. But only, his NHL career was not nearly as extensive. He did have some games. Obviously, he played some, and it wasn't his first stint in the NHL. But you're talking about a guy who spent, I can't remember the numbers, but 9 or 10 years in the minor leagues and was a standout in the American Hockey League. And so he came in, and he's the guy who gave us unbelievable goaltending to come from last place at Christmas and to qualify on the last day of the year to make the playoffs. And so he got injured, and Bush came in, and Bush played really well also. And so they kind of tagged off of each other, but again, it was based on injury, not necessarily poor play. One went down, and one was able to go. Well, that guy went down, and the next guy, and then the other guy was ready to go back in, and so we were able just to tag team them through injury and get to the finals.
So, Lav, you've watched some of these Stanley Cup playoffs here, and you would have coached against Florida at least 3 times, and the Leafs 3 times this year.
Yeah.
What were your impressions of those clubs? I guess, are you surprised by what Florida's been doing in the postseason?
I'm not. We played Florida late in the season, and if you look at and we played Toronto obviously too through the course of the year. And Toronto they're dangerous, and they're fast, and they're skilled, and they're capable of really doing a number on you. And so you have to be ready to defend. You have to be ready to do the right things with the puck all the time. When we played Florida, I remember going home after the game, and I talked to my wife about it. I'm like, this team they're in a different. I think they're on a different page because a lot of their skill plays within a real aggressive style. Like, Tkachuk is a hard player to play against, and Ekblad can be a hard player to play against. And, the centerman there that they got from Calgary,
Bennett.
Sam Bennett, yeah, unbelievably hard to play against, like a physical, gritty, tough player. And Gudis on the back end, and you just go down their forwards and you look. Lomberg's hurt right now, and a lot of their forwards are really hard to play against. They're kind of built for that. As you know, when it ramps up and the battles become more contested, I just left the game, and I'm saying if they get some good goaltending, which they have, I think Bob's played excellent. Down the stretch there was the goaltending was switching off there at times, and. But Bob's a world-class he's a world-class goaltender, and I think he's a 2-time Vezina winner. And so they built a team, I think, that's capable of success in the playoffs, and they needed to get some goaltending, and they've gotten it.
Peter, as far as what you just mentioned about an aggressive style out of the Florida Panthers, the Leafs went out and they got a Lafferty and a Chari, but most often those guys find themselves in the bottom six. Is this a time when you wish the Leafs, some of their stars, were able to put more of an aggressive style together with that skill that you were talking about? Is there a big difference between not having that guy in a top six or not?
You know, as you know, Kip, this thing has been won. This cup has been won a whole bunch of different ways, and it seems like, you know, whoever wins, everybody tries to emulate that a little bit the following year. You know, like, and if it's done 2 years in a row, you really try to emulate that. And you know, I'm thinking back to like 2006 when we won in Carolina. I don't think that we were per se overly physical. I think that we played hard. Like, you know, there wasn't that. Although I remember in the finals, maybe it's just the Stanley Cup that brings out the best in the physicality in everybody. But you know, we had good skill on that team. We had Rod Brindamore and Justin Williams and Eric Stahl and Corey Stillman was unbelievable for us in the regular season, but in the playoffs too. And you know, we had a lot of guys. Dougie Waite came in and Mark Recchi. So it's not necessarily those type of players that you're talking about. Although they played extremely hard in the playoffs, we felt good going into the playoffs. But I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's completely necessary. I wasn't at the time when I made that comment after we played them that night. It's not like I was saying, oh, because they're going to play the Leafs somewhere down the road. I was just making a statement, just a general statement. I'm like, that team's ready to play in the Stanley Cup playoffs because of the physicality and the puck battle physicality, the little bit of nastiness they bring. But that doesn't mean that they're going to win the cup either. You know what I mean? Like Toronto pulls out of this, they go on to win the cup, and everybody's going to say, well, you got to do it exactly like Toronto does it. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, that seems to be it. It's all such a copycat league, and so I guess my question for you: you have so much experience with this stuff. Is the people in Toronto will be saying that if this core four doesn't win a cup, that you could tape all the grit and intangibles and all that stuff outside of them. It doesn't matter if they themselves don't have it. But you look at players that go on who don't necessarily have that. Maybe a Phil Kessel wins a couple of cups. Like there are people who have had success without that sort of chippy build. What are your thoughts on your core and what it has to be? Like, can they do it with a group like this, or do you need to have that bit of edge within your core?
Well, I think so. I mean, you're talking about really good players there, and so you know they've had some battles in the last couple of years, and you're facing Tampa Bay a lot. Tampa Bay was built, and they're a real good team, and so. I don't think that they've ever, you know, come out and embarrassed themselves in that manner. When you're talking about the core players in Toronto, you're talking about really, really good players, and so, you know, I don't know. You know, can you change things and can you mix it up? Yeah, you can always do that, right? But with regard to those players, I mean, they're in the prime of their career and they're really high level players, so. You know, you'd like to see him win one game tonight and then move on. Like I'm telling you, the confidence of winning just one game, if you can really just keep it that simple. I remember asking going in, you know, do you think if we play the Bruins one time, do you think we can win one game? And we'd already played them well. Like and the answer was resounding. It was just a simple question, but it was resounding in the room. The answer was yes. I asked Mike Richards, the captain, can we beat them in one game? Yes. Yeah. And then you harp on that. And then, you know, going out for the third period, can we win? Can we beat them in 20 minutes? And the answer is yes. And then from there, like that confidence that you get from that. And so obviously it's important, right? Because if you don't do it, then you're going home. But that one win can really give you a lot of confidence. It can springboard you in the right direction.
One more for me, Peter, and I love having you on, and I wish we had more time to get into this. And that is, again, going back to your situation. Any team in the playoffs is down 3-0. their stars aren't going. We know that. In terms of Sheldon behind the scenes, when you're desperate, down 3-0, and you need to go challenge 3 or 4 guys, can you? How hard behind the scenes would a coach now challenge his star players, verbally, emotionally, behind closed doors? Can you almost embarrass them into playing better? Ultimately, we can talk about how poorly these guys have done up until this point. But doesn't it fall on the coach's responsibility to get these guys ready? And if he can't do it, ultimately they get somebody else.
Yeah, those are a lot of questions. And I'm not in the room. I don't even know if it would be fair for me to comment on that. I know that there's a whole bunch of different ways to skin the cat when it comes to coaching. And like I said, they've been an elite team the entire year, and for years they've been a top team. And so it would be difficult for me to answer that question.
But in general, Peter, like, is it attacked? Is it something that coaches can do? And did you challenge? How hard did you challenge the guys in Philly in 2010?
Well, there's different ways to do it, right? So there's always different ways to do things. Whether you call them out, whether you do it in an office and you put it all on the table, whether you bring some sort of motivation, some sort of something that rallies. That's why I was saying there's a bunch of different ways to skin the cat, and so I don't dare try to speak to what went on in there. I know that Sheldon's got a really tough job, and their coaching is really difficult, and so and they've been a really good team. But with regard to what's going on, there's a bunch of different ways that you can go at it. You can go at the group. You can go at the leaders. You can go at anybody you want. You can do it through trying to be firm. You can do it by trying to make this message, tell this story about greatness. And, there's different ways. That's what I'm saying. There's different ways to skin the cat. And I think you have to get a read on your room and a read on where everybody's at. If there's not much confidence in there to go down and bury them, in some sort of verbal beatdown, I'm not sure that that's the answer either. And so, but again, with me, not knowing what went on in there, I don't even dare to guess it. But I do know that from a motivation standpoint, from a coach, there's lots of different ways you can go at things.
One more, and I love having you on again, just in terms of, I know 10 or 15 years ago, I know when I played, man, it was simple, man. They're coming after you if you're not delivering. Have the kids changed today? Is it harder to get to them?
No, I still think you can go. I still think there's lots of that with regard to going into a room, and I think you have to be that way. And so I do think it's changed, Kip. There's no question that the game has changed with regard to that and handling the players. But I always think that there's a time for that. I just call it plain honesty, right? There's always time for honesty and a message to be sent. But I really think you got to look at where your team's at and try to get a feel on how you're going to change it and how you're going to make a difference inside of that. And so, it's definitely changed. So back when you played, you're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, there could be things flying in the room and barrels being tossed and sticks being broken and, but there still is at times, I think, here, but I really think you got to read the situation tonight.